Uncharted, out in theaters now, directed by Ruben Fleischer, who has previously made Zombieland Double Tap and Venom, so not the greatest resume. The film is based on a popular video game franchise, which in turn was heavily inspired by the Indiana Jones movies. So we've kind of come full circle, and one has to wonder, why not just watch Indiana Jones instead of this? The cast includes Tom Holland, Mark Wahlberg, Antonio Banderas, Sofia Ali, and Tati Gabrielle. And the casting of the two leads was has actually been pretty controversial among the video game fans. Apparently, both of those actors are nothing like the source material, which made a lot of people very upset before the film even came out. Now, I have never played any of the Uncharted games, so I can't comment on the accuracy. I went into the film with a fresh eye, but it is undeniable that both Holland and Wahlberg kind of play the usual versions of themselves. They don't really step outside of their comfort zone and play exactly what you would expect from each of them. The plot goes like this. Holland is Nathan Drake, a street-smart bartender who also happens to be a good pickpocket. His lifelong dream has been to find the lost treasure of Magellan, but after his brother Sam disappeared off into the world, he put that dream aside. One day, a treasure hunter named Victor Sullivan, played by Marky Mark, approaches him saying that he may have information about Sam's whereabouts, and because the two knew each other, but he will only let Nathan know he will only let Nathan have this information if Nathan first helps him find a lost treasure, which turns out to be, you guessed it, the gold of Magellan. The two of them plus Sully's friend Chloe team up and go on this treasure hunt around the world, constantly betraying and double-crossing one another, but they're not the only people after the gold, because so is Antonio Banderas, the descendant of the Spanish merchant family that originally bankrolled the expedition. So, I didn't expect much from the trailers, but the movie ended up not actually being too bad. But my problem with it is that it is also not particularly amazing. I think it just falls square into that not great, not terrible territory, being rather mediocre overall. And the biggest takeaway for me was how generic and soulless it felt. I never really connected with any of the characters. I couldn't find an emotional core in the film. Instead, it focuses on all those big action set pieces which lack serious tension. You never really feel that the characters are in real danger. And, you know, Holland is being Holland and Marky Mark is being Marky Mark. The plot is pretty stupid, but that's to be expected in a movie like this. But then again, there are a few things which are difficult to believe even here. The first one is the way Antonio Banderas is handled. I don't want to spoil anything, but the way that subplot goes is just extremely disappointing. Secondly, the logistics don't really make sense. I mean, most of the places they end up going to are supposed to be uncharted, remote, hidden places. They actually seem like they should have been found years ago, like just right away. There is one secret cave which you get through which in order to get to, you get through a literal dance club. And the final location of the treasure is this sea cave, which from the outside looks very inviting, so you kind of wonder why nobody has ventured inside. And then inside of it, okay, fair enough, there's a very narrow entry from the sea where you have to swim underneath. But then it turns out that there's inside the cave itself, there's a huge opening above in the forest, large enough to actually pull the old sailing ships from there upwards from the cave. So how come nobody saw this before? And then there's the problem with the laws of physics. They not only get thrown out the window, they are then trampled, set on fire, brutally tortured, and then burned at stake. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen so many ridiculous things in one movie. Even Fast and Furious and the recent Moonfall were less egregious. There is that sequence which was shown in the trailer with Nathan just jumping from one cargo crate to another, being pulled by a plane in flight. That's rich, but it isn't even the worst offender. The final sequence, and this will be spoilery in terms of what kind of action happens, so if you don't want to hear that, you can turn this review off. The final sequence looks like this. Nathan finds the two Magellan ships just sitting there in a sea cave for 500 years now, loaded with gold. Now, you're wondering, the audience is wondering, how are they going to get the gold out? Turns out, as I said before, they fly the cargo helicopters above the cave, they strap each ship to one of them with chains, and they just pull them up. Now remember, 500 years old ships sitting in a damp cavern all this time, probably rotten to oblivion. I would be afraid to step on those wooden planks, but they just lift the ships, and yet not only do they not break, there is then a really long extended sequence where the good guys control one flying ship strapped to the helicopter and the bad guys control the other. And they have a literal aerial battle between them, involving the ships swinging around, crashing into one another and the rocks. And somehow through all of this they remain unbroken, and it is just impossible to suspend disbelief anymore. Now there is a phrase used for TV shows and movies, which is to say that someone jumped the shark. It comes from the show Happy Days. You can look up the origin of the phrase, it's kind of interesting, but in general it means a point where a show or a series or a movie has run out of ideas and officially is just trying to outdo itself, and in trying to do that has done something so ridiculous that it's just impossible to even go back. It's a point of no return. Got it? Okay. The film Uncharted does not jump the shark. It jumps one helicopter carrying a ship with another helicopter carrying a ship. I'm not joking. There is a moment in the film when they're on a collision course and Marky Mark does this like quick pull up of the helicopter to go above them, and it's filmed like he's jumping from an even ground, complete with a slow motion effect. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, if you're able to enjoy these types of movies which completely ignore any reason and logic and laws of physics, there is some entertainment to be found in Uncharted. For me though, it felt like the movie lacked an emotional core, lacked a heart, instead just being very generic, very corporate and cold, and trying to make up for it with over-the-top action. So going back to, I think, the first question I asked myself in this review, why not just go back and watch the Indiana Jones films?